The first Democratic debates are on the books, and we're turning our attention now to the country's most populous state, California, with by far the most electoral votes, 55. And it's especially critical this year with the date moving up to maximize the impact of the primary. NBC's Molly Hunter is live in L.A. in Senator Kamala Harris's home state. Molly, what are you hearing from voters there?
Chris, hey, good morning. That's right. So we're talking to a bunch of voters actually at the Grand Central Market. Everyone's getting breakfast, coffee, fueled up. Come with me. We're actually just going to grab Penny and Abraham. They watched the debate last night. Guys, good morning. So what did you think last night?
I mean, my first thought is, I was really disappointed that more of the candidates didn't touch on, climate change and making that their top priority. But I think there were strong candidates last night. Abraham?
Yeah, I agree. There was a lot of really strong candidates, but I feel like they talked about a lot but didn't actually go into detail with anything and didn't have a solid plan for really anything.
What did you think of that Harris moment that everyone is talking about when Senator Harris called out Joe Biden?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was definitely a bold move on her part. Go her for taking that jab at him, and I think it really showed, her strength. Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, I respect her for it. I mean, I think it's necessary that we kind of challenge old ideas and kind of bring in our generation's opinion or her generation's opinion.
Yeah. So talk about the generation. That's what you guys were telling me earlier. What do you think the biggest kind of divide is? What do you want to see?
Right. I mean, I think they even talked about it. The guy from California said, Biden himself said that it was time to pass the torch, and I think that that's totally right. I think that the older ideas aren't as popular with our generation, and it's time to let people like us who are living through these issues that are going to affect us in the long run make the decisions.
And I think the main difference for me would be just it's more the younger generation has more of a call to action and to actually want to do something. And I feel like these older Democrats have just been sitting in their office nothing has changed and they've been there forever. So.
And one more before I let you guys go. Did you have a favorite coming out of last night?
Coming out of last night, I don't have one candidate that's my particular favorite, but it was definitely exciting to hear new ideas from candidates that I hadn't heard of before.
Yeah, I think I still stand with Beto pretty strongly. I really like his ideas, and I feel like moving forward, I'm excited to hear more from him.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. Chris, I'm going to send it back to you. But we have been talking to a lot of people this morning, and there's a lot of enthusiasm. We had a bunch of people who watched the debate last night and who are excited to hear more from these candidates. Chris?
I'm just going to say, if you set up that live shot, that's kind of a scam. One of my favorite places in Los Angeles, especially for food and coffee in the morning. Thank you so much, Molly Hunter. Let me bring in Adrienne Elrod, the former director of strategic communications for Hillary Clinton's campaign. Back with me, Jason Johnson, politics editor at TheRoot.com. Both are MSNBC contributors. Interesting to hear the young people talking about the old folks. And by the way, Eric Swalwell might want to tweet. I'm that guy from California who talked about. Anyway, look, California is Harris's home state. She won election to Senate with 61% of the vote, but in a recent LA Times poll, look at her. She's down in fourth place with 13%, although, Joe Biden has 22%. What do you think about last night? We were having this conversation earlier, Adrienne. Will the performance she gave last night change those numbers?
Well, Chris, I think it certainly will with younger voters, and I think the focus group that you just did was a testament to that, talking to some of the younger people saying not only do they like Kamala Harris's comments last night, but they like to see this whole new slate of younger, candidates, the next generation, really, of Democratic Party leaders who were on that stage last night. On the flip side, however, I'm interested, and this is what I think is going to be very fascinating over the next 24 hours, I'm interested in seeing some of the exit polls from the debates pertaining to how that moment, the Kamala Harris-Joe Biden moment, how that actually resonates with older voters, with, white working class voters who tend to be, some of the most active voters of the Democratic Party. How will that moment resonate with them? I know that there are some people who felt that Kamala Harris was maybe a little too aggressive toward Joe Biden, maybe took it a little too far. So I'm interested to see how that moment in the debate actually impacts their feelings about this race.
Yeah, although I think she was very smart to start with, I don't think that you're a racist. I mean, she began with a very respectful statement. Somebody else who I think we're not talking a lot about is Pete Buttigieg, although you heard from one of the young folks there in L.A. about him. His star has definitely been on the rise. I think that last night he, like a lot of people on that stage, were a little bit overwhelmed by Kamala Harris. But he did have this moment when he was asked about the police-involved shooting of a black man in his city. Take a listen.
The police force in South Bend is now 6% black in a city that is 26% black. Why has that not improved over your 2 terms as mayor?
Because I couldn't get it done.
Do you think, Jason, he gets props for taking responsibility, or will voters say, look, if he couldn't handle it in a city of 100,000 plus, how's he going to do it in the entire country?
So does Obama get elected if his slogan is, no, I couldn't? No, it's pathetic. It's not just that the police, the black population, the police department has dropped since Pete Buttigieg is in office. It's dropped in half. It's the fact that not only was this officer involved shooting a problematic situation where an officer turned off his body camera, it's the fact that the other officer, Nepper, who actually took Eric Logan to the hospital, has been accused of various violations, has been disciplined and taken off the street several times for abuse and violence and aggressive behavior with voters, with regular people living in the city. Pete Buttigieg, I watched last night's debate, and when he says, I take responsibility, I didn't get it done, I'm like, I have to see you across from Putin. I have to see you across from leaders from Saudi Arabia. I have to see you across from leaders from China. If you can't handle it there and you can't give me a better explanation on how you're going to do things better, why should I believe you now? I appreciated his honesty, but it doesn't encourage me that this guy should be president.
Yeah, and let's listen to how his constituents in South Bend, Indiana responded to what he said. Here we go.
He's getting attacked by everybody, and he's still got better responses than over half of them.
I was impressed by his response, and I like a couple others' responses as well, but he's the one I was really looking at tonight, so he made a good impact.
You know, he has been, Adrienne, a candidate to watch. Did he help or hurt his cause last night?
Look, you know, I think, Chris, when it comes to, you know, a lot of voters, the fact that he showed humility, the fact that he, you know, essentially said, look, I have not solved this problem, and I take responsibility for that. I think that's something we oftentimes don't see in a lot of elected officials, and I think that, you know, a lot of people view that positively. However, to the point we just talked about, that Jason was just talking about, I mean, Mayor Pete is still basically polling around 0% with African-American voters, and you simply are not going to get elected by the Democratic Party to be the nominee if you don't have support among that community. And I think the last week has been really hard on his candidacy. The real question going forward is he able to overcome this? How are the next few weeks going to shake out? And is he able to put this moment and this situation behind him?
Can we talk for just a second about somebody who's been the butt of a lot of jokes, Marianne Williamson? But I'm going to make a controversial argument that she said one thing that maybe some folks should pay attention to. Take a listen.
I'll tell you one thing. It's really nice that we've got all these plans, but if you think we're going to beat Donald Trump by just having all these plans, you got another thing coming. Because he didn't win by saying he had a plan. He won by simply saying, make America great again.
Adrienne, as somebody who was on the other side of it, do you see a candidate who has a simple, straightforward message, a mantra that they can sell? And is she right?
Well, look, I think she's right, and I think that, you know, with all due respect to Marianne Williamson, this is exactly why we cannot have debates going forward after the second debate that include 20 candidates. This is why the DNC windowing down the field and strengthening the thresholds is so important. But she does have a very good point here when it comes to a simple message about Donald Trump. And, you know, I frankly didn't hear enough candidates really drawing a contrast with the principles of the Democratic Party last night versus the policies of the Trump administration. And I think that her simple message of basically saying, hey, guys, we need to focus on Donald Trump as opposed to having these intra-party squabbles, I think that actually makes a lot of sense.
One of the most interesting things always about the debates for me is how wrong we all turn out to be sometimes when we say what we think is going to happen. But here's one thing that I will say, and that is, Jason, that before the debates, early in this campaign, we heard a lot of people saying, well, now, before the first debate, right, long before the first vote was cast, maybe Kamala Harris could be the VP. Maybe Elizabeth Warren could be the VP. Those two women arguably won those two debates. Right. And while that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win the presidency, should those people, well, I wonder what they're saying now.
Well, look, I'll tell you, Chris, I all along have been saying on this air and in writing and radio and everything else like that, Kamala Harris isn't running for VP.
No.
Okay, that was something that a bunch of men and I think some media people created because they just couldn't imagine the idea that this biracial black woman with a white husband from California who's a prosecutor could somehow be the nominee of the Democratic Party. I always thought that was crazy. She's not running for vice president, and there's a very simple, practical reason why.
Neither is Elizabeth Warren.
Neither is Elizabeth Warren, because you're not guaranteed to get that job. You don't know who the front runner is going to be, so both of them have to actually try. Now, look, I hear some people saying now it should be a Harris-Warren ticket. I don't know if I think that's going to work either, but I think the biggest takeaway that I got from these two nights is that you don't have anybody. This isn't 2012. You don't have a Herman Cain out there. You don't have a Newt Gingrich. I'm just running to raise some money. I think you've got a good 8 people who really want this job. They're actually competing for this job. They're not just trying to get on television. And that's good for American democracy. I'm glad to see that it's a full slate and not a bunch of people just trying to get attention.
Yeah, and they've got a lot of ideas, and they do have a lot of plans,
Right.
and we're going to hear a lot more about them. Jason Johnson, Adrienne Elrod, good to see both of you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Up next today, more Democratic presidential candidates are making their